Hey, what's up guys? Shuckleking here, bringing you APA Academy Season 4. I'm super stoked to bring you guys this again because I won Season 3. So hopefully we can continue to trend and win Season 4. I did have a broken team though in Dragapult Zeraora, and I think this time around my team is not going to be as broken because we are playing low tier actually. So that means Dragapult and Zeraora and a lot of really good mons I had on that team like Mammoth Swine are not going to be available for me to pick. So we'll see if I can adjust to this format, or do I have to have Dragapult to win championships. It's kind of what it seems like. But anyway, if you guys are watching this and you're new to the channel, welcome. Thank you for joining, and hopefully I can give you guys some really high quality draft league content. Now currently 4 for 5 for Wi-Fi championship wins. And I've made playoffs all 5 times, made semis and lost to OG Albina, Frenzy P in my most recent Wi-Fi adventure. But consider giving a subscription. Definitely appreciate the support you guys are giving. Maybe give a comment about how you think my team is going to turn out this year. Hopefully it is going to be pretty fun. But as I said before, we're doing an APA low tier. So it's going to be 11 Pokemon that we're drafting, ranging from 1 to 16 points. It's for 100 points total. So it's a decent amount of points. So if you pick like 6 16-point mons, that would leave you with, 96, and then 4 1-point mons would almost be like the minimum. So like you could definitely have a lot of mercy in terms of getting some really high value picks and some maybe not so high level picks, or get a bunch of mid-round picks. So it really depends how I want to spread my points around this. And it's also kind of hard to determine what Pokemon are actually that much better, because there's not enough evidence out there that shows what Pokemon are a lot better in low tier format compared to the standard format. And the tiers were kind of adjusted, so it's not like you take your standard tier, cut off all the Pokemon like 12 points and below or so, and say, okay, that's gonna be low tier. There's gonna be some Pokemon that are lower in point value that we banned, some points that are higher in standard format that we figured would be okay in this format. So it's gonna be very interesting. I guess for context, the 16-point mons, which is the most expensive tier, are Blaziken, Celebi, Cobalion, Entei, Heracross, Slowking Galar, Tornadus Eye, and Zygarde 10. And I think those Pokemon definitely range in values from standard draft league, so the points are going to be different. And I got 4th pick overall, which I guess is cool. I mean, it's cool if I get pick for a Dragapult against EP, but it's kind of hard to say which mons are definitively better. I have my top 5, which I'll share in a bit, and I'm obviously going to get a Pokemon in my top 5, but I feel like I probably would have preferred to get a later round pick so I could get 2 really high quality Pokemon, but hopefully I can still get like 2 of my top 5 like at the end of round 2, because it's going to be 16 man draft, or person draft, I suppose, so it's going to be by a pick 4, then it goes to 16, then back around to pick 13 of round 2. So what is that, 16, 29? So I have like the 4th and the 29th pick. So I would kind of doubt that I get anything in my top 5 for the 29th pick, but maybe I'll find something pretty good. And if I can get something really good at the end of round 2, then I'm fine with my draft position. A couple things I noted that are different from standard before we get into what my picks were. High speed tier is still really nice to have. You want, base 100's like, I suppose, like a standard speed tier to have. I don't know if that's necessarily that important, but you want pretty fast mons, I would imagine. Especially because generally the downside of the faster mons, outside of like Dragapult and Zeraora, they'd probably be the 2 to stand out. I suppose Tapu Koko too, because Koko's still very fast. But for the most part, a lot of the high speed tier mons, like you could say a Selgorb is really fast, but they're a lot weaker, so they're not really hitting that hard. But the thing is, the defensive pivots for low tier are just not going to be as good as they are for the higher tier. So I feel like getting fast mons that are weak are still going to give you even more value in this, because the defensive walls aren't going to be as good. So even though you're hitting not as hard, you'll still be hitting probably hard enough. So I definitely want to get some really fast mons in this format. Spikes and T-Spike users are still pretty prevalent. We lose Ferrothorn, Mew, Skarmory, Toxapex, Nidokings, but there's still a lot of Spikers still available. And we also didn't really lose any spinners. You have like Excadrill, Starmie, I think that's it. Even like Regieleki we decided to allow just because it's supposedly gets shut down by ground types, but we'll see about that. There's very limited steel types in this format, like your Metagrosses, your Celesteelas, your Aegislashes are all gone in this. I would say there's maybe a dozen that are at least decent-ish and like decent-ish is like including like Doublade, and that's like kind of niche anyway. And even less amount like Doublade, like Durant, Klefki, Magnezone, pretty decent steals, but they don't have rocks. And generally I like my steel to have rocks, so it's probably a good idea to get a steel type, probably preferably with rocks. And I think by round 2 or 3, honestly, because I don't want to be left with a really bad steel. Like Ferrothorn could be usable, but it's not something I would prefer for sure. And I suppose you don't need a steel, but I think steel's the most important type in draft, so I want to get something that's pretty good in that role. Dragons are pretty limited in this format. It's Zygarde, which is more of a ground type anyway. Flygon's okay, Tyrantrum's fine, Dragalge. But you don't really need a fairy type to handle your dragon types. Now, there are a lot of fighting types in this format, so fairies aren't bad for that. If you want to get that over like a bulky psychic, but I don't think fairies are that important, so it's not something I'm necessarily concerned about. And weather. In this format, I think it's really, really bad and really nerfed because we banned weather extending items. So like Damp Rock, Heat Rock, Smooth Rock are all banned in this format. So none of the weather setters have momentum unless you use, what's it called, Red Card. I think that's Red Card is the one that switches yourself out. So you could bring in like a Gigalith, you switch in onto a hit, and then you immediately get Red Card out. Or Eject Button, that's it. Eject Button, that's the move. Or the item. So Eject Button still is okay to have weather out for like 4 turns, but that's only going to work once. So I don't think weather's really that good. And it was something I definitely considered for a while, and I just figured like all the weather setters were set really high in price, and the sweepers were pretty high in price, and we didn't allow the boosting items. So it just seems borderline unusable. Unless you wanted to use like a 2 Pokemon combination, like someone getting Hail plus Arctozolt, I think that's definitely okay. But outside of that, I think it's really niche to use weather in this format. But as I said before, I had pick 4, and I think I had a top 5, and number 1 easily was Heracross. I think Heracross is borderline stupid in this format. Hits very hard, base 85, speed, really high attack, and 3 really good abilities. So definitely would have picked that if it fell to me, which, spoilers, it did not fall to me. No Dragapult shenanigans. But we have Celebi, Tornadus, Xurkitree, and Snorlax. I think those mons are the top 5 for me. Celebi, Tornadus being in the 16-point tier, and Xurkitree, Snorlax, I believe were both 15. Xurkitree might have been 14, but I think they were both 15. But I think they were all the top 5. So I didn't get Heracross. Celebi is cool, bulky grass type, but I don't know. 4 times weak to U-turn isn't the biggest deal, but it's definitely something to consider. Tornadus is really cool. It hits super hard, harder than Tornadus Therian, but obviously doesn't have the healing ability with a Regenerator, and you have to rely on Hurricane. It's only 70% accuracy, so, and you're not going to run Air Slash. Air Slash is weak. I'm not going to be like that. Xurkitree, super strong, not that fast, but 183 base special attack. That is just ridiculous. And Snorlax, really nice special defense. There's a lot of fighting types, so it's a little bit limiting in that regard, and I figured I wanted other normal types instead. There were a lot of replacements for Snorlax, a lot of replacements for Celebi, so I don't think I would have picked them unless the other top 3, which were Tornadus and Xurkitree, fell. Were also taken. So I picked between Tornadus and Xurkitree, so as you see, I decided with Tornadus. I'm going to rely on the 70% Hurricanes, go big or go home. But really cool speed, base 111, outspeeding 110s. It's probably like in the top 15, top 20 in terms of speed, so it's still really fast. It has a lot of utility with Prankster, and I kind of considered it for the weather capability with priority Prankster, Rain Dance. No Damp Rock, unfortunately, but Rain Dance would have been cool, and to have 100% accurate Hurricane, especially if I go Life Orb. But the mon is just so strong, and there's really not a whole lot of switch-ins. Steals, you have to deal with Focus Blast or Heat Wave. Rock types, Focus Blast, or like Icy Wind if it's like Aerodactyl. That's a pretty good answer. It has okay coverage versus electrics. You'd have to like Focus Blast or Sludge Bomb. It's not great, so you have to have something for electrics. And Tornadus doesn't have the greatest bulk, but if I compared it with a Wish Passer, that would definitely be great. But it has the capability to go physical, special, taunt, priority taunt, so make sure any niche type of setup threats aren't going to be that big of a deal. It also has Tailwind and Nasty Plot, so 2 really cool setup options if I want something more of a breaker type for bulkier teams, or something to make sure I sweep endgame versus offensive teams with Tailwind. So really cool option in Tornadus, and hopefully I just hit my moves most of the time anyway. But the next Pokemon I had, I feel like was really broken. Not something I wanted as a top 4 pick, but if it fell to me in the second round, there's almost, unless of any of those top 5 are there, I was going to take this mon. And all my top 5 are taken, especially because Mid picked Celebi and Snorlax. That's just a crazy combo. I really like his team a lot. But anyway, I got Blissey. I'm not really sure why we allowed Blissey and not Chansey. I think Blissey is a lot better than Chansey anyway, because you can run a lot more items, have more versatility in that regard. But it borderline invalidates special attackers. And Tornadus is one of the Pokemon that it would invalidate, so I grafted it so I don't have to face it, so that's great. And a fun fact, uninvested base 106 HP mon sealed 100% HP with a wish from Blissey. That's just ridiculous. And Blissey can run teleport, so you set up a wish, then you teleport out. Unless if like your opponent hard switches into their fightings, I probably don't want to stay in unless I'm Chople. And I could be a Chople counter to beat fighting types, I really had to, but I feel like I could maybe draft some mons that resisted fighting and I'll be fine. And as you see with the rest of my team, I definitely handle fighting types well. It's also a rocker, cleric. Blissey's pretty straightforward. It's probably going to be max HP, max defense every week, with either Stealth Rocks and Soft Boil or Wish Teleport. Seismic, Toss, Toxic. Pretty basic moves there, but Blissey doesn't really have to run many creative sets. I have enough other mons that can be creative. Yeah, I talked about how important steel types were. And Cobalion and Steelix were the only 2 steel types that were taken by my pick in round 3, which I thought was kind of crazy. And Registeel or Bronzong, something like that, would have been really reliable as a steel type, but they were kind of one-dimensional. And I also wanted something that was more versatile and something that could have fit in Rain. Again, I didn't go down that path, but something that could have fit in that path, and that's Klefki. Priority Rain is nice. I could still use Klefki Rain plus a Tornadus to have 100% accurate Hurricane, especially if I want to run like Life Orb. That'll be a pretty strong option. It has spikes, so spikes and in tandem with Tornadus or with future offensive mons that I pick. It's neutral to fighting, which is better than like Registeel, which is really weak to fighting. And Klefki can set up. It has some really cool setup options, so hopefully I can sweep some teams with Klefki. We'll see. But Prankster T-Wave, second priority Defog user. Not that I feel like I generally want hazards up on my side because Tornadus is probably going to run boots almost every week, so I don't have to worry about rocks. And I can always just wish past a Tornadus if I miss like a Hurricane and take a big hit. I could just go into Blissey later on in the game, wish and teleport into Tornadus and be at full health again. So I don't have to worry about hazards necessarily. So I think I want to keep spikes up for the most part, but. Yeah, no, I like the combination of Klefki plus Blissey. It's not Scorn Blissey, but it's a pretty close second. Klefki doesn't have reliable recovery, which is unfortunate, but I'll have ways around it. And I've also spent about 50% of my points at this point, so definitely have to be a little bit more frugal. But again, as I said, I had 1 to 3 point options I was pretty happy with, so I'm not worried about spending a lot of the points. Just the downside of spending all these points was I knew I wasn't going to be able to get Rain because Politoed is just not that good without Damp Rock and with how expensive it was. It didn't really provide that much defensive versatility. But back in my pick for round 4, there were a lot of really cool offensive mons at like the 12 to 14 point range. But there was a Pokemon at 6 points that was just way too good to pass up, and that was Tauros. 6 point Tauros is just incredible. It has so much coverage, and like unlike Smogon, like it'll have 4 move syndrome, but it doesn't have that in draft. You know who your Pokemon, opposing Pokemon are, so you can easily run moves that should be able to hit everything on a team super effectively and or get hit really hard by a body slam. Or whatever normal coverage or normal move you want to run with Tauros. I think body slam is probably the strongest one out there. So yeah, no, really solid 110 speed. So I probably have 2 of the top 20 fastest mons, and Tornadus plus Tauros, like special plus attacking, and both can go like on the opposite end. Like Tauros can go special if I need to with sheer force, boosted fire blast to hit like a Steelix or something, or ice beams or surfs to hit like a Rhyperior. So Tauros has a lot of versatility there, and should have some pretty fun sets. Tauros could be Intimidate, but I don't think I'm going to run Intimidate. It'll probably be Sheer Force, Life Orb, close to every week, unless I'm going to run like a Scarf set or something. But yeah, I really like Tauros, Tornadus as an offensive combo. They both have coverage that hit Steel types and Rock types, but not super, they're not the most reliable ways. So I definitely wanted to be able to handle those a little bit better. Next turn, I wanted to round out my bulk and get a T-Spike Absorber, since I don't want to spin or defog a lot with Klefki Spikes. I really saw something for good value, especially because Galar Slowking was 16 points. Figured getting Slow Bro for 8 points seemed like a really, really good deal. A lot better than 16-point Slowking, even though that's good value, and that's going to be a fun mon to use. I think Starfeesh has it. But Slow Bro is a lot better offensive stats, both on the physical and special side. It's not as hard hitting on the special side, but can go physical, unlike Slowking. So I like that versatility there. It could be physically or specially defensive. It could be an AV set or really physically defensive with Slack Off. Or Recover, I forget which 50% recovery move it has. Doesn't have Teleport, which is but it's a quad resist to fighting, so I definitely need a lot of fighting resist to have Blissey on the team. And Regenerator is a super clutch defensive ability. It has a Quick Draw, so maybe I'll run some cheeky sets with that. Maybe I'll run Offensive Trick Room, Slow Bro, we'll see. But it's also a mon I never used and wanted to try. So next to this point, I wanted to draft them on that just could win a game on its own. Tornadus can, but with Hurricane, it's not that reliable. It's going to be hard for me to say I'm going to win every week with Tornadus hitting Hurricane. And I also want a mon that can run Momentum a little bit more reliably than Tornadus. I don't want to run a U-turn on Tornadus a whole lot. I just want to hit Hurricanes and just nuke Pokemon. So I got Sharpedo here for 13 points. It's a nice Pokemon that can go both special or physical. Maybe physical is a little bit better because Flip Turn will do a little bit more damage, but special is also really solid. You can't really say Sharpedo is going to be a physical or just a special attack mon. You have to consider both sides, which is really nice. And Life Orb just shreds, especially if you got a Protect up. You should outspeed a lot of Scarfers, so I imagine a lot of teams are going to run Choice Scarfers, Electrics against my team. And there's a lot of Electrics that outspeed Sharpedo even after a Protect from Sharpedo. So I do have to watch out for that, and I don't have a mon that takes an Electric types great, so I do have to worry about that later. But yeah, no, I just really like this offensive combo here. It takes on Water and Fire types, I suppose, which I don't have a resist for unless it Blissey counts. But it's a mon I wanted to use for a long time, especially getting close combat that hits Steals a lot harder, and obviously destroys rocks for Tauros and Tornadus. So honestly would have preferred Cloyster in this slot, but it was picked, and when I decided against Rain, Cloyster was already taken, so it was kind of unfortunate there. But I like this offensive combo here. Damon doesn't take on fightings like Tauros, but the rest of my draft will take on fighting types. I feel pretty okay with this. So the next Pokemon I wanted was a ground type to take on those electric types that Sharpedo and Torn don't want to handle, and also a reliable Stealth Rocker. And T-Spikes is clutch. So Runerigus is a really cool Pokemon with Wandering Spirit to handle fighting types like Heracross, so they can't really run Guts against my team because otherwise they're going to lose their ability and get burned. And Mienshao, so I can get away a Regenerator. Oh, Mienshao's banned, but it takes on a lot of fighting type Pokemon really well, and takes on electric types because it doesn't have a 4 times weakness to Energy Ball or Grass Knot like Rhyperior, for example, or Seismitoad has. So it's pretty reliable to get up rocks, or reliable to take on electrics and kill in return with Earthquake. So that's decent enough attack. Didn't really like them on early on in the gen, just thought it was a worse Cofagrigus, but it fits really well on the team, so I'm cool with it. And it's a fighting immunity actually. And it also handles rocks and steel types, so Runerigus was definitely perfect for my team. Next I wanted a good fighting type. Wanted Beware, even though I had a normal type, but Beware for 7 points was great value. Unfortunate that Vepsis got it, but I got something that was a little bit faster. And Surfetch and Machamp would have been cool, but they were a little expensive at this point in the draft, and not as fast. And I wanted a really good knockoff user, but both of them are. But I went with Gallade for 8 points. I felt like that was really nice value. It has Teleport, so Momentum, albeit probably not going to run it a whole lot, but has a lot of weird utility moves that Mega Gallade has. Even though Mega Gallade usually doesn't run those utility moves, it'll just run Sword Stance 3 attacks. Is usually the best better knockoff or bulk up sub 2 attacks. That's also another good Gallade set. But I guess Triple Axle, which is super, super strong if you hit all 3 moves, and I will. I'll be hitting all my moves this season. It's a really reliable knockoff user, and I only had Torn that did that, and Torn doesn't really want to run knockoff. So Gallade having knockoff is definitely great for me. Another fighting resist, and another Pokemon that takes on Steel and Rock types really well. Has a Shadow Sneak, T-Wave, Will-O-Wisp, a lot of versatility there, and pretty cheap fighting type. And I went with this over getting a Druddigon and a cheap fighting. Even though I don't have a great answer for fire and water types at this point, it's better against Steel and Rocks, so I'm fine with taking that hit. So I have 12 points for my last 3 picks. I could have gone Druddigon here, that would have been 9 points, and then gotten 2 really cheap mons, but I wanted Pokemon that I felt like was going to bring a little bit more. And there's a really cool Dragon type for 3 points that I wanted to try. So Altaria's on the team. Has boots, so it's actually very special defensively bulky. And on the physical side, it takes hits pretty well, like close combats. So it can run both defensive and special defensively pretty well. 4 times weakness to ice obviously stinks, but I have a pretty decent ice resistance on the team. But could be Dragon Dance, Cotton Guard setup sets. Probably going to be like a Roost, Aromatherapy, Roost Heal Bell type sets, Defog, a Status Absorber. And can even take Ice Beams from like special attacking mons that don't have Stab on their Ice Beam. There's not a whole lot of Pokemon in low tier that have Stab Ice Beam, so I'm fine with that. I could take hits and deal at least somewhat decent damage. It doesn't have the greatest attacks, it's only 3 points, but it's a pretty decent defensive pivot that takes on water, fire types, and ground types. Since my only ground resist was a Tornadus, so just a really solid pick. And continuing with the ground resists and getting 3 of the same typing in my drafts, I decided to go with Flying as my type of choice. It's also a fighting resist because it's a flying type, so Rotom S, Rotom Spin, Rotom Fan. Really nice Scarfer option, because right now my only Scarfer option, reliable Scarf option, was Gallade. I guess Sharpedo and like Taurus and Tornadus could, but I really don't want to run Scarf on those a whole lot. But I can run Scarf a lot on Gallade and Rotom and be pretty effective. But Rotom's base 86 speed, so it has to be Terracross, which is great, and other base 80/85 mons. It's another fighting resist, so great. And the last Pokemon, for 2 points, I didn't really have anything for Entei or Alola Marowak on the team. I don't have like a bulky water. And even like Altaria doesn't really take Banded Sacred Fires that well from Entei, or Flare Blitz plus Poltergeist from Alola Marowak. So debated between a couple mons for 2 points here to fulfill this role, and I decided to go Palpitoad. It'll come to a game or two, probably against those Pokemon specifically, but it could also run a Swift Swim and sweep with Rain Dance Swift Swim sets, so we'll see. It's a third rocker, so it might do something, but I'm really happy with this team. It's going to be super fun. If you guys knew, I was a NU main back in the day when I played Smogon, so I'm really excited to use these low tier mons. But yeah, thanks for watching this. Consider giving a subscription again, greatly appreciate it. Check out all the other coaches in the links below. But yeah, we'll see week 1 next week. But until next time, later guys.